This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week is Mr. Tom LeBlanc, Mr. Tom LeBlanc from Commercial Integrator Magazine. How are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me today, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you, by the way, so much for hosting a bunch of us, integrators and consultants and folks like that in the industry this week at the CECI Summit. So,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Learned a lot. And if you're interested, we'll talk about how to get a hold of next year's, because they already have next year's scheduled. Also with us, this group right here is an audacious, auspicious, and an awfully awesome group. What we did was we sent out some emails and said, all right, Commercial Integrator did the 40 under 40 again this year. And so a bunch of friends and colleagues were on it. And so I contacted the ones that I knew had been on before, and those are the folks we have. So all three of these, Tom and I, are no longer eligible for the 40 under 40. I'm not going to say how far we are, but hey. First up is my buddy, my pal, my cohort for EdTech, Mr. Mike Tomei. How are you, sir?
Good, Tim. Doing really well.
And
glad to be here.
congratulations.
Thank you. I was very excited to see my name on that list. A lot of great people on this list and last year's list too, so I'm really honored to join everybody.
Well, last year's list was it was last year's list. That's all I'm going to say about that. Also, right. It's Victoria Ferrari from Synergy CT. How are you, ma'am?
Great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And last but not least, my favorite programmer in the whole world, and that includes the guys that work for me. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We did a special at the CI Summit, and had your buddy Mr. Chuck Espinoza from the AV Power Up show.
Nice.
He was great. I don't know. So Corey was in the room, and I don't know why he never got on. I think he was too busy talking to people. Not that Corey talks too much.
I was going to say, once you get Corey going, you probably were never going to get him on.
I think that is exactly what happened. Yes. All right. Let's real quickly. I did this last week because you guys actually released this on Friday last week, but I want to do it again. Lots of great people on here. Lots of combinations, Tom, which is really interesting. I think Craig McCormick, who actually wrote the article, said you guys had like 60 people in 40 slots, which is darn impressive. So kudos to you guys. Real quickly, how do you guys find the folks?
Well, this year, Craig basically, put out a call, via an article on CI, kind of reminding everybody about the coverage from last year, and also just kind of hitting people up on Twitter and LinkedIn quite a bit. We have a lot of folks in mind going into something like that we'll try to put the application, in front of appropriate people that will nominate them. But that's the other thing I should mention. Everybody's nominated by somebody else. There's a third-party endorsement for everybody, and it's we write a lot of articles every year for CI and Tech Decisions, and this is probably one of the ones we're most proud of because one of the things you hear a lot about in the industry is how the industry is getting kind of gray. Guys are. Guys is actually appropriate. It's kind of an old guys industry, and we're trying to, paint a picture of the younger, more dynamic, not more dynamic, the younger dynamic people in the industry that, are adding a new element, and we think there's actually a lot more of that than is usually illustrated. We're really proud of this article and of the folks who made the list, both this year and last year, but especially this year.
Well, especially this year, yeah.
Yeah, it was better than ever.
Yeah.
I think so.
Woo! Them are fighting words there. If you didn't know, I was lucky enough and honored enough to be on last year's list, which is where all this last year's list, this year's list back in.
Tim, can I quickly ask a trivia question?
Shoot.
Who came up with the idea for the 40 under 40?
Craig McCormick, actually, is the answer to that question.
Oh, that's not how I remember it.
And he deserves a raise for it.
I remember it being an excellent suggestion from a 39-year-old Tim Albright.
It was possibly. That is possible.
No, I thought we were talking about how that would be good to illustrate that, and And I always remember it as the idea stemming from you, and Craig and I thought it was an awesome idea. So
Well,
thanks for that, Tim.
Absolutely. You can take my ideas and run with them anytime you want, especially. All right, let's get on. I don't think you've ever told that story. Let's skip that one. I'm not even interested in that one. One of the things that comes out of commercial integrator and then the CICE summit is a bunch of different things. The one thing that I like, and I said this the other day, was you have commercial and residential together. There's a lot of cross-pollination. A story that came out this week, and Hope, we're going to start with you because it's a programming story, and it's freaking awesome. Just personally, when I work 9 to 5, I work in a programming house. I run a programming house called Innovet. Dish Network has done something interesting. They have drivers/modules now for AMX Crestron, Pro Control, and RTI systems. Hope, for the first question, how big of a deal is this? Because the fact that Dish Network, and I'm not aware of any DirecTV yet, but I could be wrong, Dish Network has said, you know what, here's some great, back and forth two-way communication, some things that we can do, more than just pushing an IR, which is honestly how we typically run these things. But they've recognized value in connecting with some of these control systems. How big of a deal is that?
I think it's great news. I think it shows that people are responding to our industry and trying to do things for our industry. I'm like you. I hate IR. I don't want to use it anywhere. I guess us programmers are a little bit of control freaks when it comes to stuff like that.
Very well.
Thank you. I'll be here all day. And I think it just shows a commitment to integration. There's a lot of products out there that are not integrator friendly, and by working with control manufacturers, putting out modules, it shows a commitment to wanting to be integrated into a house solution. Right. And I guess we'll have to see how good the modules themselves are.
That's the other thing. It depends on who wrote them. I'm going to say about that. Mike, you live and breathe in education, but I, for one, have put in more than one cable system. So, is this a good thing for Dish Network maybe becoming more prevalent on campuses, or just for speccing other projects as well? Does it help?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I was actually surprised that they didn't do this sooner with this product. I don't think it's a brand new product, this hopper that they have, the dish box, but I was kind of surprised they haven't done it sooner. Yeah, I think it's really important for them to do it. I'm also not a fan of IR, and anytime I see something like this, it might sway me to go that direction when speccing out a system, just based on the fact that they're embracing professional installations rather than just looking at it as a just residential item that's going to go in.
Is that something you consider when you spec products, is whether or not, if you have, let's start with one premise, you have a control system, all right?
Yeah.
If you have a control system, is that something you look at when you look at the products, whether or not it has, two-way communication, whether or not it has a module like this?
Oh yeah, I mean, you constantly you'll have a client say, well, why are you speccing this Blu-ray player when I can go down to Best Buy and get one for $89 and throw it in there? And very first thing I go to is control. I'm probably speccing a pro unit that's going to have control that's going to be a lot better than IR. So yeah, I think it's really big to look at when you're speccing out the equipment.
Victoria, kind of the same question to you when you're working with your clients. Is that one of the conversations that you have? Is the differences between not necessarily pro versus residential or consumer, but the differences in between what we can talk to and how we talk to it, whether it's be IR or 232?
I don't ever really get into that much detail. A lot of times the clients don't care; they just want it to work. So I don't know that I ever really get down into that much detail. I mean, I'll tell them like whether we need a RF remote or something, like that. And we ask them, what kind of cable are you going with and which boxes and that kind of thing. But they don't ever really ask me like, for that much detail on how we're going to make it all work. I haven't run into anyone like that yet anyway, so.
Do you have the conversation then maybe about switching cable or content delivery devices where maybe they have Dish this month and next year they have DirecTV? Do you ever kind of say, okay, this is where we're at now, but should you in the future decide to change, then we're going to have to do some adjustments to the coding?
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. All right, Mr. LeBlanc. When it comes to this, is this a good sign for? I don't know. I hate using the word legitimize our industry, but maybe Dish is recognizing the value here.
I mean, it can't hurt, right? I mean, think about in our worlds, where we work, how big of a company Crestron is in our industry and in what we do, and think of what big names AMX and Control4 have, for instance. But imagine you're at like a block party, or you're hanging out with like your kids as friends as parents, and try to picture whether or not they have ever heard of those companies. It's weird. These companies are so omnipresent in our industry, but I don't think that it's been a long struggle for them to penetrate the mainstream. So you're always kind of looking for like the Trojan horse to get those solutions into mainstream consumers' homes, and something like this is something that could help. A few years ago, I think Control4 was being sold at, I want to say, Best Buy. That seemed like something that would raise mainstream awareness. Even things like Xfinity offering home automation, the idea of home automation becoming more, part of the mainstream lexicon, things like that can only help the industry. So, let's see what happens.
All right, very good.
Happens.
All right, let's move on to cable and connectors, because there's nothing, more exciting than cables and connectors. The EE Times, which is a bastion of excitement. EE is, I'm just being all kinds of sarcastic today. It's been a weird week. They're talking about USB, and specifically USB Type-C. If you're not familiar with this is the next iteration, the next generation of USB. If you pay attention to Apple and Macs and MacBooks, this is the connector that is going to be on the MacBook. That's it, USB Type-C. Here's a couple of really cool things that this sucker can do, though. Yes, it can give you power. Yes, you can still plug in your phone and do this, that, and the other. Yes, you can, get a mouse on that and all this other jazz. It can also do video. That interesting. So here's the one thing that and Victoria, we're going to start with you on this. When it comes to speccing products and putting together systems and working with your engineering team, or again working with your clients, how concerned are you about this connector? And if you're not, when do you think that we as an industry should be concerned about this whole cabling situation?
So you sending me that article is the first time I had heard. I didn't know that they were coming out with a new USB. I think definitely it's something we need to start thinking about, especially if Apple is going to be pushing it. We try to future-proof our systems as much as we can. We sell, for example, like table boxes with retractable cables that are modular, that can, as things change, you can just swap out the, inserts. Or we include, a matrix switcher with extra inputs and outputs. Try to do things so that a client, as the technology changes, they don't have to completely forklift everything that they have. So yeah, definitely it's something we maybe not immediately have to start designing for, but for sure in the near future. Now, I don't know how the video thing is going to work, though. USB is already limited on distance. On the, what is there going to be a limit on USB Type-C? The regular USB can only do like 16 feet. And And then when you start extending USB, you run into issues. I mean, USB at the most basic level, like mouse to your keyboard, keyboard or mouse to your computer, keyboard to your computer. Yes, it's great. It just works. Or charging phones and stuff. But when you start using USB for like touchscreens or trying to extend it, I mean, it's a lot more complicated than most people realize.
That's a very good point. I didn't even think about the distance limitation of USB. So, manufacturers can start creating. Well, there are some folks that have USB B, A, and B type extenders, but we'll have to start creating the C ones. Mr. Tomei, Victoria mentions forklifting your entire system. So, how do you future-proof when it comes to stuff like this?
Yeah, I think it's the whole, like going from VGA to DVI to HDMI again. I just wish they would let us kill off VGA first before another connector comes in,
VGA is dead.
No, not in higher ed, man. Oh, it's still, everybody still wants it in the rooms. It's, well, what if that one old laptop comes in that needs it? It's like,
then shoot
okay,
it
fine.
with a
Yeah.
shotgun.
Yeah, exactly. So, yep. But
VGA is not even dead in the corporate world.
No.
yeah.
My sister called me up yesterday and said, "Can you just send me an email and tell our IT department why I cannot get my VGA laptop up on an HDMI screen?" I was like, by the time you buy all the equipment you need to get this over there, you're better off just buy a new laptop.
It's cheaper.
Yeah. I think USB Type-C is the real deal, though. When Thunderbolt came out and Lightning came out, Apple was saying, this is it, this is our connector. And then they were good, but they just didn't really kind of take off. But there's so many companies that are signing on to USB Type-C now that in the computer world that it's going to be all over the place soon. But in the Pro AV world, yeah, we're still kind of sitting there waiting, and that's a hard one to future-proof, because if you have if you're putting in like DM transmitters and receivers, that connector just doesn't exist right now on those. So those are all boxes that are going to have to be swapped out, and that's a tough one to future-proof for. You're just going to have to spend money when that starts appearing everywhere, or buying lots of little adapters and boxes that convert things, and then we're back to all those problems again. So,
Tom, from your standpoint, what are you hearing from the manufacturers and also from some of the integrators about this? Have you had that conversation with them yet?
No, not really, to be honest with you. But I'd echo Victoria's point. About the fact that Apple is embracing it really kind of makes you really take a wait and see attitude with this. Like, wow, like this could have a big impact on the market and on system design. But then again, maybe it could just be one of those things we're talking about now, and 6 months later we wonder why we ever talked about it.
I don't necessarily, because to Mike's point, the fact that you've got computer manufacturers jumping on board, which you didn't have with I almost said Fireball, good lord,
Thunderbolt.
With Thunderbolt, and I have not been at a conference, with Thunderbolt and Fireware. I mean, Fireware was there for a little bit, but all right, Hope, from your standpoint, whether it's systems or wonderful digital matrices that you get to run around with all day, is this something that we got to worry about yet?
Not yet, just because there's so many components that would have to get replaced later. I agree. I don't think there's a great way to future-proof it, but I think it is definitely something that we will have to think about putting in the future. I think it'll be a great option. I'm just thinking it's fewer cables to trip over. It looks so much nicer when you don't have 6 wires hanging out of a podium. Just one to plug your laptop in will be great. I'm hoping that Apple actually implements everything. I don't know if everybody remembers Mini DisplayPort when it first came out. Apple didn't give you audio, which is kind of a big deal. So as long as Apple gives you everything, I think they have been a driver of new cables and connectors, and hopefully this will take off, because I think it's a great option.
I do too. I'm excited about it because of the addition of video. once you start adding that into USB. I think it'll be kind of cool. All right, from our buddies over at ScanSource. ScanSource is getting ready to buy KBZ. Last week was all about somebody buying somebody and somebody getting rid of somebody else. So we have one more as a holdover for that one. ScanSource is basically picking up a Cisco video conferencing distributorship by buying KBZ. Tom, when it comes to stuff like this and basically acquiring a line by purchasing, which honestly in the integration world happens from time to time, where you're a Crestron house and you buy somebody that's happens to be an AMX house, and suddenly you have the ability to do both now. Is this a good move on ScanSource's part to pick this up?
I think definitely. Yeah, I mean, I see Cisco being reflected in a lot more projects than I did like last year, the year before, and I think there's a lot of traction in video conferencing in general. I think the Cisco brand is associated with video conferencing, and in a lot of ways, I think it's a very big deal in terms of reaching a lot more customers with Cisco products. I think it's huge.
Yeah, Victoria, from the most part, ScanSource does security, point of sale stuff, and then we got some communications. This adds to that. Is it something that most integrators should be concerned about, because a company that services a whole other sector is basically making available Cisco products to their existing, the security guys?
No, I don't think that matters that much. I mean, we already go up against IT integrators and other integrators that have even direct relationships with Cisco, where they don't even have to buy from distribution. They can buy from Cisco directly and get better pricing. So I don't know that ScanSource buying KBZ adds any more danger there than what was already there. But I definitely think it's a good thing. But it kind of makes me wonder, what does that say about Polycom? Because ScanSource is a big distributor of Polycom. So I found it interesting.
That's a very good point. I hadn't even considered that yet. Yeah. Victoria, really quickly, when you run up against the guys, the security folks that are direct and the IT folks that are direct with Cisco, do they have the entire gamut of Cisco products, or are they limited by servers and stuff?
No, they have everything. They can sell the network stuff, the security stuff, the telepresence stuff. That's how Cisco calls it, and so. But they can't sell microphones from Revo Labs or Crestron stuff.
No, but they can sell that. But Cisco has their own mics and their own touch panels, for crying out loud. So, pretty slick looking ones. Mr. Tomei, how big of a deal is this for a distributor to add another line by acquisition?
Well, I think if these IT integrators kind of lump in video conferencing installs, it's not a bad thing, because then 2 years later the clients will call us to fix them. So they'll say, how come I spent $10,000 on a codec and the microphones sound horrible and this and that? It's like, okay, now it's a different world, and so I think the market is still there. It's not like the IT integrators are really taking over that end of things. One thing I actually found surprising from Infocom from the show, I forget which award it was, but there was a Best in Show Video Conferencing Award, and it was actually the Vadio AV Bridge that won it, a web conferencing device. So in the higher ed world, I know video conferencing is still big in corporate world, but in higher ed, really, it's web conferencing that's kind of replacing a lot of the video conferencing installs that are out there. So I think that's really my focus, because most of my clients are higher ed clients.
So because of that interface that allows what that device does, it allows you to take pro level gear, whether it's cameras or microphones or what have you, actually just anything that you can do balanced or unbalanced audio and converts it into a USB signal that goes into a computer of some sort that's running that.
Yep.
It's running that soft codec. Honestly, when you're setting up the codec, you have the little drop-down menu, and it allows you to select which one. So, you know. All right, Hope. Any for this one, distributors and all that jazz? Does it interest you or get you excited or anything?
Backdoor negotiations are just, programming's one thing, but acquisitions is another. No, I would say that anyone who has dealt with KBZ4 support will say that ScanSource picked up a great company. I don't know if you've ever had to call them for help, but their support techs over there are great. I mean, I know a lot of people that buy Zcare just so they don't have to call Cisco. Cisco support is notoriously not great. But you call KBZ up, and they'll dive deep into a manual to get you, just the right command to send it over RS-232 to make the codec do something maybe you shouldn't be doing. They're really useful. So I hope that they continue to do right by the folks that work there. That it's not just to buy the distribution, because those techs over there are great.
Very good. All right, something that came out of the CECI Summit this week, USAV and ProSource are launching support for $3 to $5 million. $3 million to $10 million commercial integrators. So in other words, they're getting together to kind of focus on that market. Tom, you're the one who wrote the article, so we're going to start with you on this one. This actually came out of a conversation that they had with each other at the 2014 CICE Summit, which again, it goes back to what we talked about the other day, the cross-pollination. I absolutely love this story, and I love that whole idea. It's where residential folks and commercial folks get together. They find common ground, they find ways that they can work together, and they find ways to better each other's business and find another market that they can each serve. Do you like this move? Is this a good move for both or for neither of them?
I don't know. I mean, I asked a lot of questions during the interview because, it's one of those things where I wonder how people are going to react. So basically, there's two elements of it, right? So USAV, is essentially a buying group for the commercial market. ProSource is a buying group for the residential integration market. On USAV's side, they have a lot of programs that are catered more for like large integration firms, which, the industry is very much catered for large integration firms. And on the residential side, almost every single what you think of as a residential firm does at least some commercial business. They diversify into commercial at least a little bit, and some diversify quite a bit. So basically what occurred to Casey Schwartz at USAV was that, hey, look, there's this huge segment of the market that basically doesn't have any type of like buying or benefits group type support. And that's basically what this is supposed to do. And it's supposed to launch October 1st. And one of the questions I asked, because I said I'm not sure when you asked me the question, well, how do the larger firms feel about this? Are they going to feel like, well, what are you doing? Are you training a whole bunch of residentially focused firms to be, more legitimate competitors to us? And I don't know. I mean, it sounds like the reaction that they got when they asked their members was, not as dramatic as I just kind of phrased it, but that seems like one of those things where be curious to have a drink with some integrators and get their reaction to that. But I will say that it's a smart idea because he's right. And we target firms, and there are a lot of very, moderately sized firms that, seem to get passed by. This is a program that targets them and is supposed to support them. So it's a very interesting idea.
Yeah, it would be interesting to grab a couple folks over the next couple of months and just kind of pick their brains, folks who already belong to USAV, because not every market has someone. There's a lot that do, but there's some that don't. Hope and Victoria, we're going to hit you guys first because you work for integrators, and Hope, is this something that's interesting? I mean, let's take it from the commercial side. Suddenly you have access to some more training. Suddenly you have access to some residential products that you may or may not have had access to. Is that interesting?
I think it is. I think you're seeing a lot of blending of residential and commercial these days, and I think this is sort of acknowledging that and trying to make the best of that situation moving forward. Because I feel like what our industry brings to clients is a broad base of knowledge and understanding of how their systems are supposed to work. And so a good company, the commercial company, could do a residential install or vice versa. I think the challenge is when you have people that say, oh, say a residential integrator, 2008 was kind of awful. Commercial would help us to sort of diversify our clientele. If we end up with a situation like that again, it could help get us through. And so they sort of branch out, do some commercial installs. If they don't know what they're doing, that makes the rest of us look bad. I happen to work for a company that does both. I think we do both well, but I think there are companies out there that they're good at what they do, and diversifying is not necessarily going to be a great move for them. So I think the training aspect of it is really important, because I think this is sort of the way that things are going, and if you're going to have more companies sort of picking up things in other markets, then we want to make sure they're doing a good job.
All right, Victoria, kind of the other side of that question, where what Tom said, would it make you nervous if you were a USAV member? And I don't know if Synergy is or not. If you're a member of USAV, does it make you nervous that maybe they're training an entirely brand new swath of competitors for you?
No, not necessarily. I'd never even heard of USAV. I wasn't sure what that was, but I find that resi integrators, a lot of them get a bad rep, but I found in talking with several residential integrators, and especially I was exposed to a lot of them when I worked for Stewart, the good ones are really, really good, and they know AV better than a lot of commercial integrators. They know it, down to the science behind a lot of things. So, and also to another point, we do run into, being in the commercial world, we do run into, hey, the CEO of the company, sees what we do and, oh, it's such a good job. What can you do? Can you come do this at my house? Can you put in a projector at my house? So that happens all the time. And, it's good to cross-pollinate and have the skill sets of both. I do think, though, that there are different products for each. There's resi products that only should stay residential, and there's commercial products that really fit better, in the commercial space. And so that's where the training needs to happen, and where the resi guy can't be putting in his resi stuff at corporate headquarters.
Unless it's an Apple TV. Gotta throw that one in there. That just You're not going to get away from it. All right, Mr. Tomei, take me through this both in corporate and education. You're a integrator, a commercial grade integrator that does education. Is there any value here in getting some commercial stuff or some residential stuff?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned Apple TV. That was going to be the first thing out of my mouth. In higher ed, constantly we get the Apple TV request from clients or faculty, and they want it installed in the room. There's this blurring now of residential and commercial products, and especially in higher ed, with things like Apple TV going in. And I've always been kind of surprised at how there is a line drawn between the commercial integrators and the residential integrators. And, like others said, residential integrators really have some great skill sets and could easily do the commercial installs too, or make the transition to do them. So I think this is a really good thing. I would be interested too, like Tom said, to talk to the larger commercial integrators and really get their opinion on this. But I think it's a good thing, because there is this blurring these days between those two markets.
Yeah. All right. As we wrap up here with this 40 under 40 list, From our buddies over at avnetwork.com, the millennial paradigm shift. Tom, you and I just pretty much going to shut up for the next 10 minutes. According to a recent study, this is by Jonathan Owens. According to a recent study by the Bureau of Labor and Employment, millennials make up about 43% of the workforce. Baby boomers take second. Generation X, that would be you and me, Tom, trailing in third. Gen X never managed to snag the top spot away from baby boomers. So what does this mean for the AV industry? This is a topic that actually came up at the CI Summit during the first afternoon that we all were there, talking about how to work with millennials, how to manage millennials. Some of it was interesting, some of it was controversial, I would say. Hope, we're going to start with you. I guess the best way to put this without sounding like an old dude is, how do you want to be managed? You know, I mean, if because all three of you are millennials. You know, Tom and I are both firmly ensconced in Generation X land, and there was some disagreement about where Generation X ends and where the millennials begin. I'm going to say that roughly, what would you say, Tom? Like 80, 81 is millennials, roughly.
Yeah.
Well, so I would say that all three of you are there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Because where's Gen Y?
Right.
99, 2000, somewhere in there. And then you got Gen Z, which is coming up, which are like my kids and your kids, Hope's kids. So, so Hope, as a millennial, how do you want to be managed? How do you want to be worked with?
Yeah, I just sneak in under the wire as a millennial. I think I'm in like the last year or two of eligibility. I like to just sort of be told what to do and then go and do it. I don't like to be micromanaged. I don't like, you know, I want to have feedback at the end, but I kind of just want to be given a scope of work and make it happen.
Right.
I have read a lot of things where people say they don't like the millennials' work style. They say, you know, we just want to be patted on the back all the time, and that, you know, we show up late to work every day. And I would say, you know, we're not. I can't remember where it was. It was probably one of those BuzzFeed article or something like that about, you know, how millennials are so horrible to work for.
Well, because you all got trophies growing up, you know. You know, you all got, you know, in the afternoon.
We got, see, I guess maybe that's because I'm the tail beginning, I should say, of the millennials, is I didn't get trophies for everything growing up.
Tom and I had to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow during the summer.
And you would have killed for a shoebox.
Exactly.
You know, I think part of it, too, is who your parents are. I worked for my dad. God, I worked for my dad starting at, like, an age that I probably shouldn't say on the air, lest child labor laws be, you know, still enforceable. And my dad worked me harder than anybody else who worked for him. You know, so I think I have, you know, that my work ethic from that. But and I think I want to say I haven't really worked with a lot of millennials in our industry, because I think a lot of them have gone into more software development. But now you're seeing more of them coming into our industry, and I think it's great for us, because you get a lot of people who say, well, I don't see why we have to do it this way. How about all these other options, especially when it comes to sort of things like UI, interaction with the system. And I think you get a great perspective when you get a younger clientele that's a little more, or workforce that's a little more tech savvy and can sort of try to bring things up into the sort of more high-tech area.
Okay. All right. Mr. Tomei, from your standpoint, how do you want to be worked with?
Well, I think, you know, the younger people in the industry really like a collaborative environment. That, at least I do. I really like to a business that's really collaborative, and you can rely on your coworkers, and it's not just everybody does their little task and that's it. I think that's really big for me. I've noticed from younger people too. I've noticed a lot, like Hope said, going into more software development. AV's a tough one. There's the article talks about there's no college degree for AV, and everybody comes from different areas. People come from TV, radio degrees, or computer science degrees, all over the place, and eventually fall into AV, but not necessarily right out of college. They might go into other industries. So it's a tough one to attract people, but when you do, I've seen on the programming end of things, I've seen a lot of creativity from younger people working with control system programming, some stuff that blows my mind, and it just breaks from that traditional user interface that you see on every touch panel in every lecture hall and across the country. So I've seen some really neat stuff from younger people, but I think it's just getting them into the industry is the tough part.
No,
So,
it definitely is.
yeah.
That's been one of our challenges at Innovat is getting fresh new talent, from a programming side.
Yeah.
All right, Victoria, last millennial, last 40 under 40 here. How do you want to be managed?
Well, I'm kind of like Hope, where I'm in between really millennial and Gen Y. Also, more than just the year I was born, but I started in the workforce when I was 18. So I didn't do the college thing. So I'm kind of in between there, but as far as, there are some things that I, relate to that people say about millennials, but then other things, not so much. I think it's important for me to have a job that makes a difference in a way, even in a small way, so the fact that we outfit this boardroom and it allows the people to be more productive and it allows the company to have more meetings and more meaningful meetings and make more money, then that makes me feel like I've helped the world go round a little bit, As far as management styles, I don't want to be told what to do. I like to be given, a general scope. Obviously, here's my role and here's, what I fit into, but I don't like having an exact job description. I want to add things. I want to contribute uniquely, but I also do want feedback. So as I'm going along, how am I doing? Hey, is this okay? Should I continue on this path? Or, but I don't necessarily always need like a pat on the back, like, oh, good job, kind of thing. But to get feedback on how's it go, how am I doing so far, that kind of thing. And no micromanaging.
Yeah, I've decided I'm a millennial. I don't want to be told what to do either. So. But I didn't get a trophy for everything, so.
I didn't either.
All right, guys. That's good. Tom, do you want to chime on that? How do you want to be managed as a Gen Xer?
No, I mean I agree with you. I want to be a millennial too. I like I like what Hope and Victoria both said about how they want to be managed. You don't want to be micromanaged. You want to be empowered to excel and make a positive impact. Me too. And I'm Gen X. I like that column that the guy wrote, and I thought he did a good job of kind of capturing, at least the way I read was, he was trying to, make a point that you can't really just, put millennials in a box and say this is who they are, and I think that can't make generalizations, and I think it's a nice narrative for the industry, and I'm guilty of, contributing to that narrative, but it's a little bit of a stretch. I'm Gen X. I don't. I'm not very similar to that Ethan Hawke character in Reality Bites.
No,
so
neither am I.
Difficult to make those generalizations.
Well, and that's a danger, right? I mean, there are books on how to manage millennials, and there are probably books on how to manage Gen Xers, and you can't, right? I mean, Hope and I had similar things growing up. I didn't, but I get my work ethic from my father, and I don't know that you can just stereotype everybody into what was it that they once said about Gen Xers, that we're slackers and all they want to do is sit around and smoke pot and play video games all day.
The me generation, I think.
Was that us? Were we the me generation?
I thought that was in the context of the slacker thing. No.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you
All right.
can't really stereotype, a whole generation. But there are some things that can help, try to understand how younger people approach problems or what they think. You gotta, I mean, we were the first generation with the internet really readily available at our fingertips for our entire school life. So we expect answers fast, that kind of thing. We expect, things to happen more quickly. We expect to have resources at our fingertips, those sorts of things.
That's the best point.
That
right
there is, yeah. I wrote my senior paper in high school using an encyclopedia.
What's that?
Oh yeah.
And it's just saying, if you
Wikipedia?
don't know what
Did you
that
say
is, it's
Wikipedia?
several books, alphabetized about yay thick each, and yeah, as soon as they were printed, they were out of whack. So.
Right.
All right, guys. Mr. Mike Tomei, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How can people get in touch with you if they would like some consulting done?
Yeah, my website is the best place to go. It's tomeav.com. It's TOMEIAV.com. Or people can find me on LinkedIn also. I'm on there quite a bit.
All right, very good. Miss Hope Roth, thank you so much, ma'am. How can people get a hold of you?
I am at Reardon Brothers Integration. That's RIORDAN, ReardonBrothers.com. And I'm on Twitter at Beer and Pie.
At Beer and Pie, and explain to folks why your Twitter handle is Beer and Pie.
Because I had a self-produced album now quite a long time ago called Beer and Pie, and it came out around the same time as Twitter came out.
And it's really good. Everyone should check it out.
Yeah, I'm on Spotify, iTunes, all that fun stuff, and really I'm just holding on to it so I can explain the Twitter handle every time I go on a podcast.
That's a good excuse. I like that. So.
Yeah. Also, people tag me in their Thanksgiving photos after their relatives leave, and they have beer and pie. I get tagged in the photos on Facebook.
That's awesome. Some of them you probably don't want to share, but Victoria, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always fun. Company is Synergy CT, stands for Communication Technologies, and my Twitter is Victoria0429.
All right, very good. And Mr. LeBlanc, thank you so much, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Did you say LeBlanc?
I did on purpose. That was it.
I was wondering about that.
Where can people find you?
LeBlanc Tom on Twitter.
Nice.
Also, commercialintegrator.com, the tech decision sites on Twitter, Com Integrator. But Craig McCormick runs that Twitter account. You should be warned.
Craig's responsible for that one?
Yeah, I'm revealing who's behind the curtain. It's Craig.
Oh, I always thought it was Chelsea. All right.
But it's Craig with a twist of Chelsea and Tom.
Okay, there you go. All right. No, this week at the Commercial Integrator Summit, there was a gentleman presenter who kept calling Tom by the wrong last name, calling him LeBlanc. So, my name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me, but go by the website if you would, please. avnation.tv, avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. Check out the underwriter page. It's a bunch of great folks who help us do what we do, and kind of help it. Tell your friends about this. Tell your enemies. I don't care. But just check out the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.